right. All right, so we are officially live. I do see participants joining in. So thank you all for joining us today and being so prompt. We are going to give everybody a little bit of time to sign on today. And I will actually start with just a quick poll. So as you're joining, if you don't mind answering this first question, we're just interested in where everybody's coming in from. And I'm going to launch that in just 1 second. All right. Polling. Launch poll. Okay. Okay, everybody. Thank you.
Annie, I'm so glad you're at the controls.
I'm actually going to stop my share for just 1 second because I'm going to write in 2 other polls while we're doing it. But yeah, I know my technology exposure over my education and technology, I always viewed myself as someone who's quite adept at it, but there's no cheat sheeting it.
You're flying the spaceship.
Yes. I feel like my technical skills have been forced to step up a level this year with how much we're doing remotely and virtually. I certainly wouldn't consider myself an expert. I wouldn't recommend myself to help anybody with real issues, but I feel like I've learned some handy tricks.
Keeping the bar healthily low, right? Why not?
Yes.
I think that I have to say, I can't imagine being a student and trying to go with everything. The idea when I was like 10, I've seen the amazing Instagrams that are going around of the kindergarten teacher managing to have a classroom and being like, can you unmute yourself? And I'm like, even how people at our company can't handle that, I can't imagine how a 5-year-old is managing to figure out.
It's so funny, because I have 2 7-year-olds, and they're in 1st grade and watching 7-year-olds type. I don't think I typed until high school. Now these guys they're typing.
I know, and to have to do that with like the pressure, like under pressure, like maybe you learn to type in some sort of typing class or something like that, but for that to be 100% of how you interact.
Right.
Hard. That is hard. So thank you, everybody. So good amount of response to this poll, so we appreciate that. And what we are just looking for here is what your professional role is. Obviously, this is not a comprehensive list, so as best you can pick, it looks like, unsurprisingly, I think for the 3 of us to see that a good amount of folks joining here today are human resources. So usually when we here at Mamava are speaking to folks, Mamava, a lot of the time facilities-based. Obviously, ours is a space that goes into spaces, so we're talking to facilities a lot, but human resources, we know you are the heroes helping the moms every single day, and obviously that is who is probably coming to you for these types of requests. So let me make sure I share this right screen, and we will get started. I think 2:05, we are good to get going. All right. So thank you everybody for joining. What we are talking about here today is what breastfeeding employees really need. As you saw in the invitation, hopefully gender diversity is hugely important for any company's success, but that is at risk if we don't have workplaces that support women once they become moms and need to return to the workforce. So we have an amazing panel here today. This is Mamava's Pumpcast, our webinar series that we've launched, another silver lining of the new reality that we're living in. This has been a really exciting thing for Mama to be a part of and brought together such an amazing partners. And I'm really thrilled to be with these two women here today. So to introduce myself, I am Annie Odie, Director of Sales Operations here at Mamava. And I have been at Mamava now for 4 years. I am a breastfeeding mom of 2. I have an almost 1-year-old, actually just a week from Saturday, so super exciting. And at Mamava, for those that are maybe coming from Milk Stork, coming from Medela, we build standalone lactation suites for breastfeeding moms as they travel outside of the home. So be that for pleasure or for work, to airports, to zoos, to hospitals, to their offices. We provide the dedicated, serene space necessary to continue on your breastfeeding journey and reach those goals outside of the home. So I would love to have the amazing women with me introduce themselves. Dana, starting with you.
Great. Hey, everybody. I'm Dana Kerwin. I'm here from Medela, the #1 breast pump brand in the US. A lot of breastfeeding moms and dads know us, have washed our pump equipment, and yeah, thrilled to be here. I've been with Medela for the last 1.5 years, working on the New Moms Healthy Returns program, focused on helping employers bring moms back into the workplace after having a baby. And before that, I've spent the last 13 years working on population health solutions for employers.
Thank you so much, Dana. Thrilled to have you. And I will hand it over to Kate.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Kate Torgerson. I'm the founder and CEO of Milk Stork. I'm also mom to Zoe, Finn, and Jax. Equally important position, especially right now. And I'm their 1st grade teacher and their 5th grade teacher.
Oh my goodness.
But Milk Stork is the first breast milk shipping solution to grace the face of the earth, I like to say. We were founded in 2015 and have shipped over 3.5 million ounces of breast milk all over the world. I started Milk Stork out of my own pain point while I was breastfeeding my twins and having to take a business trip. And I was faced with that question of, oh my gosh, how do I take this trip and continue my breastfeeding? So I'm really happy to be here and to kind of share some color commentary on what it's like to be a pumping working mom.
I love it. Dana, now I know we both need that stat. Like, I can't even, what the trillions of ounces are that Medela has helped produce, but Mamava, I want to know how many ounces have been made in Mamava pods now. That is great. So again, we are here today to talk about, Milk Stork, the milk shipping, Medela, the pump, Mamava, the space, talking about that comprehensive sphere that really needs to surround the mom for your breastfeeding employees so that they can truly be successful. That there are a lot of boxes to check, and we want to make this to be the helpful webinar to explain exactly what those boxes are and how easy it can be actually to provide that full support to the new mom. So Dana, I will let you take it away.
Great. Well, I think, Annie, exactly what you said. We know that for moms to be successful, we really have to support both their career side and the family side of their life. And it's been more true. Well, I shouldn't say more true. It's been more visible than ever in the last year as we see working moms in all their glory. And I think, some of this landscape around what's happening with moms in the workplace is really important. Almost 4 million babies are born each year in this country. That's a lot of new moms out there. And when we look at households with children under the age of 18, 40% of them have moms as the sole or primary earner within that house. So working isn't a luxury, it isn't a hobby. It's something that's absolutely necessary that mom be able to do that. And when we look at breastfeeding, more than 80% of babies start out their lives receiving breast milk. Medela does a lot of research on this, and many families, most families start out wanting to breastfeed their babies. But when we fast forward 6 months, which is the recommended time that the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends babies receive breast milk, only 25% are still exclusively being fed that way. So it's telling us that something's happening in those first months of a baby's life. And I think when we look at the way mothers interact with the world today, it's unfortunately not surprising that a lot of them say going back to work is one of the biggest challenges to meeting their breastfeeding goals.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know, as Kate said, to have twins, I'm like doubly the level of intensity I can't even imagine. Like becoming a mom is completely life altering and should have a huge transition period. But we know as a country without any paid leave national policy that you may have weeks to manage to become a mom and have that transition happen before you might be back in that workplace. And you don't, if, as you say, 40% are primary or sole breadwinners, you can't say, oh, I'm going to take 4 months. You know, that's just a position we know so many moms are not in.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, you know, babies start getting solids at about 6 months, as Dana was saying, and to go back to work when you're the sole source of nutrition for your child. I mean, most women in the US are going back to work, if they're lucky to have paid leave, at around 12 weeks. So they're going back well before their babies have taken any kind of additional sustenance other than breast milk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, you know, this next slide kind of ties that all together. You know, when we ask women if they plan to leave the workforce, studies have shown only 2% say that they envision themselves leaving their career to focus on their family. But the reality is 43% of new moms are leaving within 3 months of having a baby. And it's really costly for employers to lose these women because, you know, a lot of times this is a lot of unique talent within a company, and it can cost as much as 200% of that employee's salary to replace them. And I think, you know, there's a little bit of room for difference here, you know, when you say, oh, when baby arrives, sometimes mom doesn't realize she wants to stay home until she has the baby. But I think, you know, the reality is when we're talking about a factor of 20 times greater, that's not a margin of error.
Right.
That's an issue. And I think really indicative that there's a problem that moms are facing when they envision themselves going back to their careers and feel like they can't once that baby is actually born.
And it's interesting too, within that 3 months, right? As Kate mentioned, obviously, like some women are going back within weeks of having given birth. But even those that do get the luxurious 12 weeks in this country of leave, you may still decide to not go back, right? Because and if you're not even back in the workforce when you decide to not go, you know that that mom is sitting at home thinking, well, how am I going to do that though? Or am I going to be able to, you know, thinking through all the goals she has, which is just feeding your baby. And if she's already anticipating the struggle back on site, then she's not even going to return on site, you know, but you don't know what you don't know until you really see the realities of breastfeeding, all the problems that can face a breastfeeding mom. We know all three of us have lived them probably.
I spent 33 months of my life pumping and working. And a good 15 months of those were pumping for twins. So just my experience, I always felt like I was trying to deactivate this breast milk time bomb that was about to go off every 3 hours. And it really does feel like a time bomb. You just, you know, you can't wait, you need to leave. It's urgent. It's very, very urgent. And in order to successfully pump, you need to have a pump. You need to have all of your supplies. You need to have an outlet that you can plug into. You need to have privacy. And then of course you need refrigeration. And all of these things, this combination of things can be really difficult to come by. And more times than not, you're missing one or the other. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've pumped in a corner because there was an outlet there. Or I'm sure every single lactating mom you've ever met has pumped in a bathroom, which can be a very, very gross and demoralizing experience to make your child's food in a bathroom. And these things become even more challenging when you're on the road, because really then you're sourcing all of this stuff on your own. So the consequences of not being able to deactivate that breast milk time bomb every 3 hours is that, one, it's extremely painful to not be able to express milk. And it can also be quite embarrassing if you go too long. You can actually, the milk will come one way or the other.
You definitely leak.
And then that can also lead to infection. Holding back on pumping is not, you want to do it slowly and carefully and with a deliberate action behind it. If you're just missing pumping sessions, you can get mastitis, and that's really, I mean, you're missing work. It's painful, it's awful. So making sure that women have access to these things, it helps them kind of successfully achieve what they want. And if they're missing pumping sessions too, the other thing is that they will lose their ability to lactate. And that's usually not a conscious decision. I would say a lot of the time, women lose their milk supply on the slippery slope of pushing pumping sessions or not having a place to pump. And so it just slowly goes away before you ever made an actual decision to wean your child. And that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what is made very clear, Dana, to your point on that 20-fold change between intention and end result of, I don't think I'm going to, oh wait, I have to, is that idea of just what's so insurmountable about it all, as Kate has just laid out, that it just slowly ebbs away at your ability to fully control the thing on your own.
And I think it can be so isolating for women. I mean, you look at some of these challenges and Kate, what you're talking about, it's not only is that happening, but you feel like it's happening to you alone. For a lot of women, it's not something that is easy to talk about. I mean, some people are very confident, but plenty of women, it's a private bodily function. It's not something you want to have a conversation with your manager about, your coworkers about, your HR department about. And so women don't always speak up. And I think, you know, one of the things we always tell moms is speak up. It's okay that this is happening. This is normal. But when we work with employers, we also really encourage them to ask, to touch base with employees and figure out what this experience is like. Because just because people aren't saying something doesn't mean they aren't struggling. And you don't want to find out because they leave that it wasn't working. When it might have been totally fixable.
I think it's also, you know, I think there still is a lot of taboo around breastfeeding, and you know, I think all of us are here to normalize the experience and take the taboo away from it. It's also really exhausting to advocate for yourself 3 to 4 times a day for a year to find a space. And sometimes it's just, okay, I'll pump in a corner because I just don't have it in me to fight the fight today.
Yeah.
So
and what I love is that this group joining here, you all came to figure out, okay, we know, and we've heard probably from our moms that this is unbelievably challenging, and you want to be those supporters. And what Mamava, Milk Stork, Medela, we all came together is that idea of that full toolkit that a mom really does need. So this first one here, I've forgotten my pump and had to drive all the way home to get it. Having a hospital grade pump on site at your office that moms can use, check the box. There aren't many places to pump when I travel for work. Getting the milk home is a pain. Signing up for a Milk Stork subscription, I used it actually even for sharing supply with my sister and would ship it back and forth. It's unbelievably easy. Pumping in a conference room or someone else's office, obviously Mamava there, the dedicated space you can add to any office. And hearing the bomb diffusing thing, I love, Kate, because the other thing you have to think about is the headspace you would want a bomb diffuser in, and you need a breastfeeding mom to be in to have the milk let down. There's a headspace, there's a physiological response there of calm and peace will mean a productive session. And just in the same way as you don't want someone knocking on the door when someone's trying to diffuse a bomb, you don't want someone knocking on the door when a mom's breastfeeding. There needs to be that dedicated serene space. And then, you know, milk supply decreased when I went back to work, as Kate was saying, I'm not sure what to do. Having resources available to your moms, because there just needs to be education sometimes. Best positions, best practices, best techniques to increase supply.
I will also say a hospital grade pump is just so fantastic at maintaining milk supply. It's like driving a Cadillac versus a 1968 Volkswagen Bug, which sometimes if you're hand expressing or using a manual pump, that is, you know, not a Medela Symphony was great with my twins. So props to the symphony. But I do think it's, you know, women are really trying to get to a 12-month. I mean, I think the intention when you start breastfeeding is you want to get to that 12-month mark, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation. I mean, that's kind of like the finish line that you're aiming for, but to get there, you are running this incredible marathon. Most moms, I said, are pumping or breastfeeding every 3 hours. So that's, you know, 6 to 8 times a day. It's really an ultra marathon, more than a marathon. And I think anyone can imagine that when you're running a marathon, you need support. You need people to, you need aid stations to get you, to run your best, fastest, to get to the finish line. You need people behind you. And I think having, knowing that your employer is behind you is huge in that journey. It tells people tells moms and women that you understand their experience, that you're behind them, that you want them to be successful. And if you want them to be successful in their personal life, I think that translates definitely to the professional life. You feel like you can be better at both things. Because ultimately the question I think that a lot of women face, and I will say, especially now when they go back to work, is this worth it? If they have the luxury of asking that question in the first place. And it's great. In my experience, I've seen so many employers really you know, advocating inside their companies, bringing on Milk Stork, Medela and Mamava to help moms. It's the right thing to do, I will say. And it's also now, thankfully, the law. So there are protections in place for pumping moms. So we have kind of the base foundation to build on, but there's still so much more that we can do to help moms get to their personal and professional goals.
And just a little bit of a gut check here, actually, is I'd love, actually sharing results from the first poll. So we've got a lot of human resources benefits here, which we know are huge. Diversity and inclusion, obviously gender diversity is a major goal we know of a lot of companies that we work with, but also going to do a quick poll if I can, oh, there we go. How would you rate your organization's current level of support for pumping employees in the workplace? Excellent, good, fair, poor. If you can respond to that. And I'd also just like to take the side note that Kate has now said that we are Bomb Squad ultra marathoners, that's the average way you should think about a career mom. So I really like that. These analogies we're using makes me feel incredibly cool. Whereas sometimes as a mom, especially as my 3-year-old has started to roll her eyes at me, already showing me that I'm uncool, it makes me feel better about myself. Really thrilled to see right now we've got almost 20% of participants saying excellent. Love to see.
That's great.
An excellent. And then good coming in, you know, and obviously this is all subjective. Disappointed to see the fair and poor side of it. So, you know, we are going to be talking about today how we think we can jump up that excellent zone and really start to build up the amount of people that are fully supporting moms on site.
And you know, Annie, I applaud the honesty. I do have to say, the first thing you need to do is recognize where you are so that you can figure out where there's room for improvement. So I think it's always hard to not be in the excellent category, but important to acknowledge if that's where you're at.
Absolutely.
Certainly creates a lot of opportunity for discussion and how to move it forward.
I love it. And thank you. I do see some people putting in for Q&A. We are going to have a little bit of time at the end for that. So feel free to put the questions in now. We'll be getting to those at the end of the presentation. So Kate touched on the fact that obviously it's the right thing to do, it's the good thing to do. If you have gender diversity goals, it's your goal-oriented reason for doing it, but it also is the law. And Mamava was founded in part because in 2010, with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, the Fair Labor Standards Act was amended to require coverage for a breast pump on insurance programs, as well as the time and space that couldn't be a bathroom for breastfeeding employees to pump at work. So that was huge and became the business case for Mamava. When there is this legislation, we knew that this was a solution that should be put forward. Mamava has actually done, our marketing team has done an incredible job. Please visit mamava.com/lactation-laws to find your specific state. It breaks it down. What are your rights in public? What are they at work? What are the different, if you work for different types of organizations, is there any variation in the law there? But we've of course created a drop system, and as Medela says, drops of gold. That breast milk is obviously liquid gold. The more drops you get, the better your state is at supporting breastfeeding employees, because some states really took this FLSA amendment and just ran with it. So we like to call them our breast in class states that we have here. So California, where Kate is zooming in from. Effective at the beginning of this year, it required that all employees, regardless of size, need to provide support for all breastfeeding employees, hourly or salaried, with a private non-bathroom lactation space, but they went above and beyond that. So some key things when it comes to physical support, the physical space for a breastfeeding mom to pump in, put it in close proximity to their work. The amount of stories that we've heard where women are walking 15 minutes to and then 15 minutes from. A pumping session may take a half an hour with setup, breakdown, and actual pump time. So to require hour breaks, especially for women that are hourly, that is a huge cut into paychecks. So you're looking at, okay, I'm taking out 2 to 3 hours of my paid time a day in order to provide milk. Then you are looking at cost benefit of, do I just stop and provide formula instead because I'm not getting compensated? Clean and free of hazardous materials. Kate's pumped in a lot of corners. I bet those are not super clean or dedicated or particularly non-hazardous. A place to sit. I bet those corners didn't have chairs, you know, that type of thing, where it really feels silly to us at this point to have to say, you need a chair. But these are the types of things that some folks aren't checking off when it comes to this, or electrical outlets, that they'll provide a space, but many breast pumps require an outlet. That amazing Symphony hospital grade that I'm obsessed with and is the standard for output, you have to have a plug. That does not have the external battery charger, so you want to have that there. And then obviously access to refrigeration to keep that precious liquid gold safe as you go back to the workday, and access to running water, to clean hands before, to take care of yourself and your parts. And you know, anything that a lactation space has, also ask your moms, see, you know, what it is on site that they would prefer. A lot of back of house ones, you know, we see they put in lovely bulletin boards where everyone can put up photos of their babies, seeing things like that, a noise machine, but maybe more like an airport setting, you want it even more sterile and no accoutrement because a lot more people are traveling through there.
I know so many, just anecdotally, I know so many companies that have really tried to go above and beyond and create these beautiful pumping spaces. And sometimes because they haven't checked with moms about what they actually need, they put in like reclining chairs.
Yeah.
Really comfortable reclining chairs when actually you really want to be sitting upright. So little details like that really make a difference in a pumping experience. So it is good to check in with your moms, and they would be so happy to be able to provide feedback on the space that they're going to
So true. I know whenever you see those big chairs and you're like, that poor woman's going to be perched on the edge of that lazy boy, like crouching forward. That's how gravity works, so you can't work against it. That is such a good point. And you know, I remember flying through DCA, talking to Kate about like flying, and I had my Mamava app, and so even those airports that don't have Mamava suites, we list every lactation room that is not a bathroom that we have found across the US. But I landed there, had to go out through security, pump outside of security, and then come back in through security and scan, you know, 16 ounces of breast milk.
And no one wants to go through airport security with breast milk.
Exactly. And you don't want anybody touching it, let alone obviously in current state. So what I'd love to know, actually, I'm going to poll our audience one more time. This last piece that California requires is this written lactation policy. So a specific document that says what is your organization's policy on lactation, and I'd love to know if your company has one. So yes, no, I'm not sure, and then we'll actually get into the meat of what the heck is that. lactation policy. As it says here, a statement of employees' rights and the process for lactation accommodation requests is what California includes. But we at Mamava have helped many different organizations write lactation accommodation policies. Obviously, it really is the idea of walking the walk and talking the talk. And one of the things I want to communicate here is one of the most important things that lactation accommodation policy does is you write that down for your organization. So great to see almost 50% of respondents right now saying yes. But it covers obviously educating the breastfeeding mom on what it is that she needs to do in order to get the space, how she should request it, how you reserve it, how you get access to it. But what it also does is communicate culturally to the entire organization that this is something you care about, that this is something that your organization has identified as a need for your breastfeeding employees. It's something you take seriously. Just as putting something down in writing on something negative, a harassment clause, the company is taking a position, put forward, I'm protecting my employees. Same with the lactation policy saying you can start a family here. We've recognized already that this is a need that our employees may have. This is the support we put in place. This is how you get access to it. This is for how long. You know, if you wanted to put how you inform current and future employees about any changes to the policies. But put this as in many places as possible. Everybody has the OSHA boards, you know, at the break rooms. It can be posted up there. It can go in every employee handbook, part of what someone signs on to when they join a company, proudly listing it on your company information page, showing if you want to increase gender diversity, showing we have a lactation accommodation, we have a policy, we have a pump on site, and we have milk shipping as part of our benefit package to employees. That's going to be that front and center, very clear support for those employees that choose to start a family while at your organization. But obviously we cannot talk about breastfeeding in a workplace or anywhere without acknowledging the wrinkles and even more different challenges that the COVID pandemic brings to it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Annie. I think, you know, when it comes to writing a policy, I think it's so important to make sure that it's really clear, like you said, not only for breastfeeding employees, but those who work with them, those who manage them. You know, you ensure a lot more consistency in the experience so that nobody suffers because they work in a different office or a different department, and you know that all of your employees are going to benefit from the company's stance on it. And COVID certainly makes it even more important, I think, to have a really clear plan for breastfeeding. You know, even if you have a lactation accommodation policy, I think, you know, we've been recommending, as we've talked with employers, pull it out, give it a read through, make sure you're thinking about anything that might have changed now that we live in this new normal. Are the protocols for keeping that space clean up to date? Is it being cleaned regularly? Are there sanitization supplies on site? Are moms, maybe if it used to be a kind of just an unscheduled situation, maybe, you know, you need to move to having that room being scheduled so that you're sure that there's only one person there at a time and it's very clear when the space is available or not. Just a lot of these things that can be done to make sure that the moms who are coming to work and looking to pump feel safe doing that. And we know it's a real issue. We did a survey this summer talking to moms about how COVID is affecting their breastfeeding journey. And what we found is over 40% of them said they are more committed to feeding breast milk because of the virus. A lot of moms were citing the immunization benefits of breast milk and believing that if that has any chance of being beneficial to their baby, they want their baby to have it. And so I think we need to understand that it's as important or more important to any employee who's facing this right now. And unfortunately, what we also heard is that nearly 50% of moms were not confident that the lactation space in their workplace would be sufficiently clean. And so what I think this really suggests is there's a ton of opportunity for communication. And I think this goes back to where we were talking about normalizing breastfeeding. Sometimes it can feel like, oh, should we bring it up? Do we want to point it out? You know, a lot of moms don't want to talk about it. And I think this is an opportunity for companies to really shine and say, hey, part of having a family includes choosing how you feed your children. And if breast milk is your choice, you can do that here. And we have thought about it, and we've thought about you. And I think that, you know, moms being confident, it doesn't mean it's not safe and cleanly, but it means they don't know. And so making sure that companies are talking about this, I think is really important right now.
I think also, you know, for those organizations that have employees working from home right now, if you have a breastfeeding employee who's working at home, most likely she's breastfeeding at the breast. She's not pumping. And so, and she's probably in front of her kid a lot more. So that's actually going to, I think, propel breastfeeding forward. So when these women do return to the office, they're going to be transitioning further along in their pumping journey or further along in their breastfeeding journey to a pumping situation.
Right.
I think the other thing too for women right now is that we know that working moms are really, really, really impacted. So when I said that, you know, a lot of the time women are having that choice of like, is this worth it? I think that question, it looms much larger now, perhaps, than it ever did before. So I think the stakes are a little bit higher. I think women are going to come out of this pretty committed to breastfeeding. So they're going to have higher expectations on what they need to make this transition back into the workplace, and what they're going to need to be successful in doing that.
No, absolutely. And I, you know, I've had 2 children, but I've had them both while working for Mamava. So obviously, understandably or predictably, a very supportive, wonderful workplace to be at as a new mom. But even then, pumping is intense, regardless of how supportive your workplace is. So even if it is that type of thing where this type of situation compels everyone to really offer paid leave, to give moms 3 to 4 months to 6 months at home to really establish that breastfeeding, so that when you're returning, to Kate's point, you're not the exclusive source of food, that there is that supplementation of solids starting to happen, so you can start to come back and feel less panicked about supply issues or things like that. Could be huge, but definitely that dedicated space and really, what else can you do for your breastfeeding employees? What's our big checklist here, Dana?
Yes. Yeah. So time and space, obviously, the bare bones. It's what the law requires, and it's the bare minimum to make sure a mom can pump. But there's a lot more that can be done that really signals support. And one, we've all talked about the Symphony hospital grade breast pump. Having that available in the workplace is so valuable to moms who are pumping. We hear anecdotally all the time that moms have a much better experience. They're able to pump faster. And we do want to point out, given we're just talking about COVID, for those of you who aren't familiar with the hospital grade pump, the way it works is the pump sits in the pumping room, but every mom has her own kit, which is the bottles and tubing that she actually uses to collect breast milk. So they're perfectly safe to be used. They just need to be wiped down and cleaned with the rest of the room. We also talk about pumping supplies. You know, you don't want to be at work and realize, you know, digging around in your bag and you've only got one bra pad in the bottom and you can't find another one, right? And you got this big meeting in the afternoon. So having a few of these basic supplies that mom might need on hand is just a really nice cultural signal that this is supported and that you've got her back.
Forgetting the bags is the worst, and I have pumped into so many Ziplocs.
Yes, yes. Breast milk storage bags, bra pads, and cleaning equipment are typically what we recommend.
Huge right now.
Yes.
I love this one, and be considerate of the time needed. I think that when you talk about the support, there's very much that like walk the walk, talk the talk. It's one thing to say, we've got a room and we've got a pump, but when an employee is like, oh, that's, you know, when you see someone's schedule and they've blocked, and maybe they're a little more, they're shy about it. They don't want to put pumping, you know, mine was like pump break, or it was like milk for Avery. You know, it was very clearly demarcated in my calendar, but someone might just put block. Remember that they're a new mom returning, so that block is their pumping break. And no, you cannot book over it. And that type of thing where, no, we can't have a meeting at 11, Kate is pumping. If that comes from your manager, if that comes from a supervisor, and that's the type of support communicated across the conference room table, across the factory floor, then that just establishes it as non-negotiable, as critical. You would never look at a type 1 diabetic and say like, no, you can't go, you know, do an insulin injection right now. That's just not, like, you can't go check your blood sugar. And it's the same thing. It is a hugely critical bodily function that's necessary to support life. And it needs to be treated with that level of respect, I think is huge. So yep. I want to get, we have an awesome Q&A. Oh yeah, Kate, go, sorry.
Too, and I just wanted to address the travel, because I know many
yeah.
folks aren't traveling right now, but you know, as we look to 2021 and 2022, when people get back on the road, I will tell you that going through TSA with your breast milk is not a good experience, and I don't think it's going to improve when you know, after we get through this pandemic. So giving employees an option of getting their milk home addresses the fact that they don't have to pump a bunch of milk before they leave. They don't have to manage milk in a hotel mini fridge, and it allows them to bypass the inspection process at TSA, which is a bunch of people touching your milk. So.
And in the time of, like, in post-COVID world, that's just not, I've said to Kate, actually, I flew right before everything shut down, and I flew with breast milk. And it's very, very tedious and invasive, the way that TSA can interact with you.
And charming.
And yeah, and now the idea, I would totally ship it, even if it's just an overnight. Just to avoid having any baggage claim handling, anything like that. Even just storing it under the seat, you know, the fact that the cooler's in that type of situation, you'd want it to just get to your house and into your fridge. You know, if people are wiping down their groceries, you definitely don't want TSA touching your milk bag. So very, very important. So just these, you know, next steps of evaluate your current workplace. So if obviously you got the excellent and that's how you feel like you're at, congratulations. Is there anything more? Are there organizations maybe in your area or schools in the area, anything like that, that you can showcase this type of support? Can you even highlight it more in order to peer pressure other companies into doing a better job, hosting it on the homepage, on the About Us, that type of thing, on your careers page, highlighting it so that more and more businesses realize that this is critical.
Yes.
In that lactation accommodation policy. Yeah, Dana, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say within evaluation, I just want to point out again, talking to your moms, you know, even if you think you're doing excellent, make sure that moms know what they have available, because sometimes you have these beautiful benefits and employees may not be aware of it. So I think that it's always good to just keep a pulse on how the users are feeling.
And it changes so much too, because, you know, it's been 7 years since I've pumped personally, but there's so much innovation and new services that are becoming available, and especially in the femtech space. And moms, especially millennial moms, really know about those things, and they can really inform a great experience for the future moms that are going to be coming through your lactation rooms.
Yeah, Medela is definitely the like grandmother company in this organization, the old one. But I mean, it's pumps. I feel like you guys come out with a new pump every year. And then Mamava is only 4 years old and Milk Stork is 5 years old. Yeah, so I mean, we are an example of how much innovation takes place in this space on an annual basis. So definitely talk to the moms on the ground, because they're going to be able to tell you who are the organizations to get involved with or the supports that they see. And so that's the idea, is to find products and services that fill the gaps that moms experience when they come back to work. And Dana, I'd love if I feel like you can speak to our wheel of support here.
Absolutely. So New Moms Healthy Returns, it's a program that brings really the best, what we believe are the best necessary products and services to moms who are pumping in the workplace. And it's a lot of the stuff we've talked about. It's the equipment and supplies, having a hospital grade pump and some of those resources in the lactation room. It's having private spaces and dedicated spaces. If you don't have that today, look into space solutions, and Mamavas, we love working with you guys because it's such a modern solution. It's very mom-centric, and of course it gives you some flexibility. Instead of building into your office space a single room, which is then committed forever to be that room in that place, you have something that becomes a lot more flexible. And then milk shipping, of course, as Kate was saying, you know, a lot of women travel, and the world is getting smaller and smaller. I mean, COVID aside, and us being homebound, people being on the road is just a fact of life. And so that shouldn't be, that should never be a reason a mom quits breastfeeding. And then we also offer resources and education out of Medela. We have tools for parents to use, and we also have resources for HR as well, and have a really robust set of engagement tools and communication pieces. And then last but not least, up around the top is our virtual support program. And we didn't talk a lot about that today, but I do think it's another piece worth highlighting for parents who are navigating the breastfeeding journey. If you have questions, being able to get a hold of an expert and get those questions answered in real time is incredibly valuable. And this is an app-based solution. It connects people to a live lactation consultant anytime, day or night. The connection is made within 3 minutes, no appointments. It's unlimited use. And of course, you know, back to COVID with everything going on, a bunch of moms, and in fact, they did a survey, is more than 60% of moms said they preferred virtual care. Not having to pack up baby, not having to take the risk of going into a doctor's office, and being able to get your question answered from home is so valuable right now. So this is the solution that we've designed, and the whole thing is very customizable. So if you only need parts of this, we can make it work.
And I love the virtual support too, as Kate said, you know, if you're missing pumping sessions and mastitis would maybe start, if you're able to say to someone, I'm feeling this or this is, and then a lactation consultant steps in, that employee's health and wellness is preserved, her baby's health and wellness is preserved, you still have your employee on site. You know, these things can snowball very quickly. So having that type of support and not having them go to Google, because trust me, I've Googled at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's never a good place to be.
The other thing about the 24/7 virtual support is lactation consult. You know, a lot of women get a lactation consultation when they give birth, and they have a nurse come in, and you get that kind of initial send off and support. But the breastfeeding journey changes over time, whether you're seeing your supply go down because you've introduced solids, or even when you're weaning, like how do I handle weaning, and how to, you sometimes just need to check in at these various milestones in the journey. So it's not kind of like this one-time thing. It's nice to know that you have support throughout the,
my child has started biting. What do I?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and we always say getting your question answered before the next feeding is so important. If you're having a problem, you know, even if your doctor's office can get you in 48 hours, for a lot of pumping moms, and especially at the beginning, I mean, that can be 15 pumping sessions between now and getting help. And if you're having a problem, if you're having pain, if baby isn't latching or eating, you can't wait 15 sessions. And so we really believe that parents being able to get that help immediately, right when it's happening, before the next feeding session comes around, it can make the difference between people quitting or staying on the plan.
Going 2 days without help, that makes or breaks a breastfeeding relationship right there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I want to get to the amazing questions that we've already gotten here. So thank you to everybody who submitted in. One question, which Dana, I'll love if you can speak to. We've got some love for Medela pumps here, and it says, can pumps be shared between people? Would you suggest to just have the pump and the rest of the accessories be bought by mothers, which I know you touched on, but if we just want to talk about the closed system of the Symphony and
Yes. So pumps, the hospital grade pumps can be shared. In fact, that's what they are designed to do. And a hospital grade pump is a very specific thing. So Medela makes the Symphony hospital grade pump. Mothers should never share a personal pump. So the pump that's covered by insurance, or a pump that they would buy at the store, like the Medela Pump and Style or the Freestyle Flex, we have a whole line of pumps. Those are personal use and should only ever be used by a single mom. But the Symphony, yes, it's a closed system. So the milk never comes into contact with the pump itself, and it only goes into the kit. So every mom has to have her own kit. But that's it's a couple of bottles, breast shields, and tubes. Essentially, it's not It's not a difficult or expensive thing to get. And then she can leave that when you place this in your workplace. Mom can leave her kit at her desk or in her locker or whatever the setup in your workplace is. But then it's always there for her, and she simply connects it via the tubes to the pump, which produces the suction that she needs. And it's perfectly safe and sanitary to be used by multiple moms.
I was going to say we have one at Mamava. I shared it with 3 other nursing moms, so definitely the case.
I kind of honestly say I would not have been able to successfully breastfeed twins without a hospital grade breast pump. It's just such a crucial thing. And I will also say that great individual pumps are great, especially when you're on the go. But when you're bringing them back and forth to work, you will invariably forget something, whether it's a valve or a tube or the attachments, and that is a nightmare. That is a trip home to go get it. So having something that you don't have to lug back and forth and having a place that you can go and equipment that you can use is critical.
3 times my first 2 weeks back with Avery, I got to work with just the motor. Because I would have left the parts drying on the rack, and then my boss at the time, who's still my boss, Nikki, said, who's actually out on maternity leave with her 3rd, said, "Oh, I have an emergency set here at the office. You can just use that. I haven't used it yet." And I was like, "A set at the office? Why don't we do that? Why don't we just have a set at the office?" And we both were like, "Whoa." That's the thing. When your brain is at 50% anyway, because you're a new mom, don't put all of those things together. So I definitely agree. This time around, I just had the set for my hospital grade pump at work, and it just I didn't bring anything back and forth except the bottles and the cooler. Just a little tote bag. It looked like a mini lunchbox, just so much more discreet, efficient, easy, really nice. A lot of questions. These slides will be sent. There's going to be a recording of the webinar that you will get that can be sent out. It's also being shared to YouTube, so it could be shared there. And we have some deliverables at the end of this on best practices that will be shared. So definitely. One question from Carrie: have any of you written a book on this? Good recommendations to read on the subject. I haven't written a book yet. I don't think it has. But one book that I loved as a new mom that we love at Mamava is called Work, Pump, Repeat. And that's really about how you as the mom can just think through everything you need to do before you take that first step into the office, back from work. But in terms of any resources that you all love for education?
For me, it was, I was on especially with the twins, I was on a twin breastfeeding group on Facebook, and it was amazing because just with twins, you have two different breastfeeding relationships happening simultaneously. So for me, connecting with other groups, whether they're local or breastfeeding, there's tons of breastfeeding groups on Facebook. I think that's always been helpful because you could ask a question at 3 a.m. and you know that someone out there was also breastfeeding in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I love that, Kate. Medela also has the Mom's Room, and they have a Facebook community as well. And that's a great place to go, again, where you can get connection with other moms and be plugged into a resource that you can trust. There's lots of information out there, but you do want to make sure you're getting credible clinical information when it comes to breast milk and feeding baby. I also loved Work, Pump, Repeat. I think the other one that always comes to mind was the 5th trimester. Yes. Is a really nice guide to going back to work, and I think really speaks to the challenges that are unique to that transition. And so whether you're a mom going through it yourself, or frankly, whether you're wanting to advocate for the moms in your workplace, somebody in HR, diversity and inclusion, it really provides a nice perspective on how much is happening and how many things a new mom is worrying about in those first months after maternity leave. So it's a really good read, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Just one more thing I would suggest is when I was pumping for the twins, well, for all of my kids, I was at Cliff Bar, and one of the things that they did was they set up a parents group that
love that
internally, which was so amazing because it's people that you know, and sometimes in departments that maybe you didn't interact with as much, but you were able to connect with moms on the pumping stuff, but just parents in general. And they had a speaker come in every quarter, talk about parenting, you know, whether it was online safety or just whatever. It was an easy lift, and it meant so much it was inclusive of men and women. It was just fantastic. So I really recommend, whether you do it organically or kind of help putting something like that together. It's great.
Absolutely. And Evelyn has a question: does pumping frequency change for women during the first year after delivering baby? So absolutely, you're going to be pumping a lot more with a young baby. And then, so at this point, I'm only nursing my baby to bed at night. She doesn't eat breast milk throughout the day anymore, as we're about a week away from her first birthday. But when I first returned to work from maternity leave, I was pumping actually in the morning before she woke up, feeding her, pumping twice at work, and nursing her to sleep. So it was a good amount of pumping and breastfeeding throughout the day. And then that slowly weans as you get to add more solids in to the baby's consumption on a daily basis. And yeah.
One thing that people don't always understand about lactating is that you're producing exactly what your baby needs when they need it. And that's really that supply and demand relationship. It's this amazing relationship where the baby sets the demand and the mom's body kind of responds with supply. And that's why pumping is so critical to happen at the times that it needs to happen, because if they miss that pumping session, the supply goes away at that time. And so, you know, as you introduce solids, they're getting more food from other sources that changes the supply and demand relationship. The other thing I just want to say about travel is that in the absence of being able to ship your milk home, because there is a supply and demand relationship, moms have to add pumping sessions before they leave to create extra milk. And that can take weeks or months to establish a stash. There is no such thing as extra milk. So just, it is this like very delicate supply and demand relationship. It's like looking at a store and selling inventory as you make it.
And it's really interesting too. My first baby too didn't take to solids. Like it was really like 9 months to 10 months even, where like there was really a solid meal involved in her daily intake, whereas this kid was like reaching for my sandwich at like 4 months old. It was just like, I want to eat food. So I had to continue pumping during the day a lot longer with my first than I did with my second. And I had a goal of a year, but many moms have a goal of 2 years as well. So you also have to, that's in that conversation with moms, let them drive the policy, let them drive design, let them tell you what supports in place they need. You know, their needs might change. They might just like the idea of mixing cow's milk with breast milk even after the kid turns 1 for a little while. There's a lot of things in there. So making sure to ask your number one resource expert on site, which would be the breastfeeding employee.
I would also just encourage employers not to set a time limit on whatever, or like 12 months on whatever the policy is, because a lot of women do want to breastfeed beyond 12 months. It's hard to get there, but there will be women who get there. So not being like, you have this for the first year.
Exactly. And that's a big thing. California's law says as long as they want it, you know, let them drive it. And because the lactation space, what we always say to employers as well as say to us, oh, you know, we have an employee coming back and then so we'll need it for the next 9 months. And it's like, well, you have that one employee and maybe her goal is a year. But don't you think possibly by putting these types of visual supports in place, you might have some more moms? You know, there, as we said at the beginning, almost 4 million of them every year. So they keep procreating. You're going to keep having this need day in and day out. And Carrie asks, any other resources for employees? We're going to send along these slides and a couple other takeaways along with a bunch of links in a follow-up that you will have. But I would say openly visit all 3 of these companies' websites, from, you know, the best pumps you can possibly bring on site, to the different options of physical spaces, to the different milk shipping programs that Milk Stork has available. That I think is awesome. And we have at the end, so you see that last slide, links to all of our various different platforms.
And Annie, to that end, New Moms Healthy Returns, if you go to newmomshealthyreturns.com, you can actually, with one relationship, have access to all of these services. That program was designed to simplify the buying process, so you don't have to go to Mamava and then to Medela and then to Milk Stork. You can come to New Moms Healthy Returns. We can package it all up with that virtual support program. We can put everything together. So make it really easy. It implements really quickly for companies that are looking to put these kind of benefits in place.
And as is very common with Mamava's Pumpcast webinar series, we have gone well over the original time that we had. So thank you all for sticking with us for this much time. Thank you, Dana and Kate, for joining us on this webinar. We at Mamava are so thrilled to be partnered with such incredible companies in this breastfeeding space. And it was truly a pleasure to speak with you two this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, it was wonderful to be here.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your afternoons, and we will let you know about the next one. Bye, guys.
Bye.